Connie, you're muted.
Thank you very much. Welcome again to everybody for coming. On behalf of CWD, I would like to thank you for joining us for this very distinguished panel of Hispanic women leaders to listen to their stories, to listen to their experiences that they have, so that we can learn more about what's going on within their communities and their own work as women leaders, and what we can do to assist their efforts. My apologies, I'm having problems with my slides, so I'll just abandon the slides and move forward here. But first, before we get started, I do want to do a tribal acknowledgement to honor the stewardship of the Indigenous people of Washington State, and to honor their heritage and what they have done within their communities, and especially in terms of recognizing, continuing to remember, I should say, the many missing and murdered Indigenous women within Washington State and throughout the United States. I am in Seattle. CWD is headquartered in Seattle, and so we are on the land of the Duwamish people. And so I want to respect that and honor what they are doing. First up, though, I would like to introduce Sandra Rodarte, our moderator. She is a graduate of Central Washington University. She also is working with the Latino Civic Alliance. I will pass the floor to her. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Connie. Buenas tardes a todos. My name, as she says, Sandra Rodarte, and I am a board member of Latino Civic Alliance, a statewide advocacy organization in the state of Washington. And I have been invited to be the moderator for this wonderful event hosted by Center for Women and Democracy. In celebration of Hispanic Heritage Month, tonight we will center from hearing from 4 dynamic women in leadership roles, and for the next 45 minutes, I have prepared 4 questions for each person to answer and leave the remainder time for Q&A for the public. I ask that if you have any comments or questions, please add them to the chat box so that we can ask these questions to the panelists. If time allows, speakers will be able to answer all questions. My first guest is Estela Ortega, Executive Director and one of the founders of Centro de la Raza. We also have Alma Chacon, co-founder of CAFE, a community for the advancement of family education based in Wenatchee, Washington. We also have Maria Ineguez, board director for the Wenatchee School Board. And we have Maria Sigüenza, executive director at the Washington State on Hispanic Affairs. Panelists, I do ask and be mindful when answering the questions, if you can limit your response to 2 minutes, please. And so here we go con las preguntas. So this panel highlights women empowerment. What is women empowerment? Is it about gender equality, or is there more to that? Estela?
Thank you, Sandra. You know, when I think about women's empowerment and I think about my role at El Centro de la Raza, the fact that next year I will be there for 50 years. I've been in one place in terms of helping develop an organization. And I think women's empowerment for the women at El Centro has been about becoming the women, the people that we were intended to be. Our voices were encouraged in terms of our participation, our representation in community at different community meetings. And El Centro has then taken that to look at what are the needs of women. You know, women need early childhood development services. They need training programs. They need capacity building. And we we have developed those kind of programs, including, home visiting programs, women who are at home and have children and can't come out. And so that's what I see as putting women's empowerment into practice, which means that it's not just about, pay equity or gender equity. It's about all these other supported persons that help us become the people that we were intended to be.
Gracias, Estela. Alma?
I want to say that I echo what Estela said. Women's empowerment is more than just gender issues. It's having the choice to be visible and to be heard. I think women's empowerment is about being the woman that every young girl can grow up to be. Okay, women's empowerment to me as a young English language learner who came to the US at the age of 7 means being empowered to be bilingual, to succeed in school, lived in a marriage, an abusive marriage. Empowerment is being able to overcome that, to leave that, and to be who I need to be. Empowerment for CAFE is empowering our workers, providing opportunities for our women to also be who they want to be. We have single moms that need to make it, that need to make a living. They need housing, they need healthcare, they need access to education, skills and training. To me, that's what women's empowerment is all about. It's about being engaged in politics. We have, I think that healthcare, politics, education, all those opportunities are so important. I was going to mention that Latinos represent 4% of the total number of US higher education faculty. That's really, really low. Okay, and so we need to provide those opportunities so that we can get Latinas in as high up in education as they can, involved in our political systems so that they can make changes. And we need to continue to build those bridges that generations of women before us have done, like Rosa Parks, like Dolores Huerta, like Harriet Tubman. All these many women that came before us have laid bricks to build our foundation. And so we are where we are because of them. So empowerment is about building steps so that those coming ahead of us can also be empowered.
Gracias, Alma. Maria Iniguez?
Hi, thank you for having me. On a level, women empowerment means using our stories and our life experience to lift one another up. Like Alma mentioned, we all have a story, and as a Latina, as a woman of color, we have similar history. Just hearing Alma, I was born here. However, I am an English language learner. A lot of adverse childhood experiences, and how do we use those experiences to empower those women around us and lift each other up and come together to service our community and other young women. In regards to my role on the school board, empowerment goes beyond the gender piece of it. It's about representation. How do we create policies so that we can focus on the needs of our students of color, our female students, and how are we, the work that we do, we're also lifting other students, specifically Latina students, female students. My work on the board has been short. I was appointed in January of 2020, but in my short time on the board, I have been able to connect with so many Latina young students that, you don't really see the impact that you have on your community. You just think you go and do the work, but acknowledging that there are people looking at what you're doing and paying attention, and for our young students, you know, what an honor it is for me to be able to serve in that capacity and provide that empowerment to them. But again, it's not just for our Latina, it's not gender-based. My role is, you know, about creating systems and equality for all of our students, and again, creating policies and systems that will help and support the work that we do.
Gracias. Maria? Sigüenza.
I should have come ready with a nickname. Well, you know, empowerment really for me is the ability for us to encourage and to help other leaders, other women around ourselves to promote their excellence. And collectively our excellence, right? Our collective power, our collective ability, because you know, everybody had kind of a similar thread in that we have unique experiences that have helped shape us, right? And we are able to then shape our work in a way that meets people where they are, right? And I think it is a lot more about gender equality for me in the halls that I walk in and the work that I do. It's about helping people understand, helping women understand what their collective power is, and meeting them with my knowledge, right? This is the experience that you have, and this is how we can make effective change with those stories that you have, right? To prevent and to allow those coming behind us, the youth, our youth, to have better opportunity, right? For me, it's about very similar to Maria Iniguez, is working with women to learn the systems that we live in, right? The governmental systems, and in turn be able to figure out, okay, well, I live in this town. This is how the policies and this is how they get created. This is how the county policies get created, and inspire that learning and inspire, hopefully, women that will, like Maria, step up to the plate and run a campaign and get themselves elected and become decision makers, right? That's inherently what empowerment looks like for me.
Gracias, y gracias a todas por su granito de arena. My second question that we have is, we are all experiencing a challenging time right now due to the COVID-19 pandemic. And I'm sure this has impacted you and your leadership. Can you share with us, what have you learned about yourself during this crisis? Estela? You're muted, Estela.
Yeah, sorry. That's a big question, actually, for me as an executive director of El Centro de la Raza. And so it wasn't just about me personally. I had to care day to day about the staff, the volunteers, and the participants that, you know, were highly impacted by COVID, in terms of people, you know, losing their jobs and no longer having a livelihood in terms of, you know, paying their rent and buying food. And then all of a sudden, you know, these families have their children at home. And what does that mean, where they don't have the tools? I mean, because when it first started, many families didn't have computers. The schools weren't set up to give it out immediately. And so we had to look at all of those challenges. And the first thing, obviously, was trying to make sure that we were going to protect the staff that were going to continue to work on site, and the staff that would work remotely, and all, you know, that meant. And so that meant, you know, our services changing, going online. And a big challenge is that, you know, we think most people have a smartphone, and many of our people do, but many of our people do not have smartphones, who don't even have a phone and need services. And so I have to take my hat off. I don't know how many times to our staff who came up with creative solutions and were very resourceful in how to help those people that you couldn't help remotely. And I think the other thing too is that what was important is that dollars were coming into El Centro de la Raza to house, to feed, etc. But there was no extra staffing dollars to handle that because people needed to be able to do their work and at the same time help people. And that was a great challenge because it was stressful for people. And, but, you know, our staff prevailed again, you know, they did an amazing job in terms of their commitment and helping as many people as they could. I mean, we helped over, I don't know, something like 1,500 families last year in providing rental assistance, you know, just thousands of dollars and food vouchers and diapers and helping people complete their unemployment forms, et cetera, et cetera. And so for me as an individual, I'm already a hard worker. I mean, I was working in the fields of Texas when I was 8 years old. And so I learned hard work. And it just, what COVID meant is that we even had to work even harder to be able to meet the needs of our community. And again, my staff and volunteers were ready to do that.
Gracias, Estela. Alma?
Yes, I was thinking of some words that I could share that would describe what things I learned about myself during this pandemic. And the first word I thought of was resilient. You know, we just have to keep moving, keep going. We've got to keep doing the work. Our people need the help. Our workers need the help. Our families need the help. Adaptable was another word. We had to adapt. We had to think outside the box. The way we were doing things totally changed. From having tutoring in person, we went to virtual tutoring. From having events outside, we went to drive-through events where we gave information out, food boxes, food bags to people at their cars. So we just had to find different ways to meet the needs of our families. And again, that was with those people that could work in the office and those people that were working from home. It was about how do I work with people that are working from home? You know, what can they do? What is the best way to utilize our staff to get the work done? And then what is the best way to use our staff that are here at the office? So just thinking outside the box, being adaptable was so important. One of the other pieces is in doing things differently is that there were many individuals, many organizations that were doing different things to support our community. For example, many people were making masks. And many people were handing out masks and giving out the messages about social distancing, about washing your hands frequently. And we were all doing the same thing, but we weren't coordinated. So we formed a coalition, Community Services Coalition, brought people together and talked about what do we want to do together so that we can get more bang for our buck as in a united front. So we all came out with the first campaign that we worked on last year was everyone gives out the message. We're all telling people mask up, social distance, and wash your hands frequently. And then we moved as the pandemic changed. Then we went to Sí a la vacuna, okay? So the message around North Central Washington, sí a la vacuna, or yes to the vaccine. And to today, we just got done today, actually, we sent it to print. We, as a coalition, we created a small postcard that says, here are all the locations where you can get your vaccine. And then on the back side, just a few, the efficacy of the 3 vaccines, the Pfizer, the Johnson & Johnson, and the Moderna, to keep from going to the hospital, because that's what's happening. People that are not vaccinated are the ones going to the hospital. So it's doing things differently. The power of working together, again, came in strongly. So those are some of the things that I've learned during this pandemic and that we continue to improve on.
Gracias, Alma.
Mhm.
Maria, Inés?
Yeah, for me, it was, despite the difficulties and the challenges and the unknowns of the pandemic, for me, it was a call to action. As a board member, it was advocating for our families that needed those resources. Like Estela mentioned, a lot of our families have smartphones. Some of them have, prepaid cards. They don't have Wi-Fi. Some of them don't have smartphones. Some of them don't have tablets or computers. And with the switch to remote learning, I really felt the need that we needed to advocate, make sure that every student was equipped with the necessary tools that they needed so that they can continue learning from home, right? And most of the times it wasn't the lack of a device, but the lack of network or the financial piece of it. And so what resources were in the community that the school district could pull together to provide those services to all of our students, but also making sure that we were using all the resources available and translating them in Spanish. Having all the information in Spanish, I know, doing videos to inform our parents, Zoom lessons on how they can help their students using, the online learning tools. So there was a lot of, boots on the ground sort of work that needed to be done so that we can make sure that every student, especially our Latino students who lack a lot of resources, that some lack a lot of resources, their needs were being met. On a personal level, it was, how can I help my community? Our community got hit pretty hard. Our numbers were pretty disproportionate with COVID at the beginning of the pandemic, and following Cafe's campaigns, with the masking and the messaging and their virtual cafecito, being there and being as a guest, going as a guest speaker to informing the community how we can better serve our students, and then volunteering my time, despite all the challenges at home with remote learning, having a student at home, and volunteering time to help out where the need was, where we needed it the most. And I was able, it was so rewarding to be able to volunteer time to help the community, making appointments through Cafe make sure we get our vaccinations in. And so, yeah, it was just about, for me, it was a bigger call for action. And, despite the challenges, the work continues, and you just feel empowered to be able to help out in your community even more so.
Yes, thank you, Maria. Maria Sigüenza?
Yeah, it is a big question, but I think ultimately, for me, it was thinking outside of the box and really being nimble. I always was very proud about how, I could quickly shift between priorities and talk about really figuring out how to do that during a pandemic. We're state agency, right? And so we work with communities across the state, and it was right when the pandemic was hitting, we just could see that it was going to be really bad for our communities. So, being in community with our brothers and sisters across the state, or siblings across the state, that was amazing, right? We really did portray this sense of partnership in its truest sense. And I think us being able to get together was a silver lining of this pandemic. Never do I wish that it happened, but the pandemic happened, but the partnership between our communities is really beautiful to see. Another thing that I think about is really remembering to stay grounded during all of the issues that you saw day to day and heard from day to day. I couldn't imagine working at a community serving organization because of that constant, the constant stories, right, that you'd have to work through. But, you know, we would get calls, especially when the PPP loans were coming out. We would get calls from businesses desperate to figure out how to apply. And then once those loans were being parsed out, we were getting calls from community members who owned small businesses who actually were part of a fraud scheme, that were charged thousands of dollars and charged, put into like variable loans. It was just heartbreaking, right? And so that also really helped me lean into my firm leadership, right? It's understanding what the issues are at the ground level, understanding why they're there, the barriers that our systems put in place, and then staying really firm alongside our community leaders, right? Because they're the ones that experience this and are in tune with their communities, alongside be able to say, this is what happens, this is the issue, this is the fix. How do we get there? Let's get there. And of course, you know, the pandemic's not over. It's been 1.5 years, and I've really been able to practice the muscle of compassion and empathy. And that's really at every single turn, right? That's within us, me supervising, me working with other folks and other agencies, working with folks across the community. We're all going through really, really tough times. And it's being able to really work with compassion and empathy in mind that has helped at least me get through each day.
Thank you, Maria. And this is not one of the questions, but it got me thinking, you know, we're seeing a lot in the Latino community, having a lot of people not want to do the vaccine. And that was part of our conversation that we had today on our meeting. And so maybe do you guys have like any kind of suggestions, or if you guys wanted just to say like a few words to those people that have not received the vaccine, just maybe some kind of you know, a cry for like help us here to get these people, you know, help the community get vaccinated, because our gente just does not want to get vaccinated.
I
don't know if you guys have any.
I can say a few words to that. And maybe ver cuatro, sí a la vacuna. Sí a la vacuna. And one of the things we find is that there are so many misconceptions, misinformation out there. So I think if we take every opportunity to say, this is real, this is not real. I mean, one of the myths is that they're going to put a chip on you so the government can track you. So it's telling them, okay, that's what you believe. Do you have a phone? Yes. Okay, well, all your information is in your phone. They already have your number. Okay, so so that chip, and then others, there are so many myths and facts. If any of us go to the Department of Health, the Washington State Department of Health, there's a whole page of information that we can give to our communities. And I think to address really all the misinformation that is out there, I think that's one of the biggest barriers. So as many facts as we can put out there to our community, the better. Sí a la vacuna. And the other message I like to give people is because they come because they want to get vaccinated, and then they kind of start backing out and start thinking about all those fears and what have you. They said, no, because I'm going to get sick and I won't be able to go to work. So I said, okay, if you get the vaccine and you get sick, you're just going to be sick for a day or two. You might have a little sore arm, you may have a little sore throat, but it'll go away. It's like having a cold. But if you get the vaccine, you're not going to be out just 1 or 2 days. You're going to be out maybe 10 days, maybe a month, maybe you'll be in the hospital. Okay, so what would you prefer? You know, so yeah.
What I would add is that I think that, you know, we have to just message over and over that people need to be vaccinated, you know, through our churches, through our newspapers, through our radio programs, you know, through those of us who are providing services. It's just, I mean, it makes me think about like when you do fundraising, how many times do you have to touch a potential donor? You have to touch them 7 or 8 times. And this is the same way with COVID, is that it's got to be, the messaging is, we've got to tell people that they have to be vaccinated. You've got to bring out, you know, the doctors and the nurses and other trusted, leaders to message that also. And El Centro had an opportunity to run, you know, a media campaign, and we did a lot of work around that. For instance, we've had over 11 pop-up clinics in terms of getting people vaccinated. The last clinics that we had were in July, and all of a sudden the system stops. It should not have stopped. You know, we should have continued vaccinating people. And of course, now that, you know, it's getting back again, we're going to be starting up some clinics within the next couple of weeks, but it should have never stopped. And just telling people over and over that that's what it's going to take for us to turn this around. And it's unfortunate that it is our Latino community and other communities of color that are not getting vaccinated. You know, so that's a sad situation for us.
Yeah. I would like to commend the work that I work specifically with Cafe and the work that they're doing in our community. It's been nonstop. It has been nonstop in regards to the work that they're doing in our community in the Wenatchee Valley. And I'm sure it's the same for Centro de la Raza. There's a lot of good work, and there's a big campaign to this day. One of the good things about our valley is that it hasn't stopped. I think every weekend you can go somewhere that Cafe is sponsoring the vaccine. And yeah, it's really sad, because my experience in regards to doing cold calls for vaccinations, there's a fear, there's misinformation, and then there's that fear of, you know, getting sick. Oh, well, I heard my cuñada, you know, she got really sick. And I'm like, okay, well, you know, what was wrong? Oh, well, she got a fever. And it's like, okay. And, you know, just listening to their concerns and explaining, okay, well, you know, like I said, well, you'll probably get a low grade fever, but you know, it'll only last a couple of days, and then you'll be okay, and you'll be protected. When you look at the consequences of COVID, you know, you'd rather get the side effects from the vaccine than, you know, be hospitalized for COVID. And so just listening to the concern and then trying to be empathetic, as well as, you know, providing accurate information. And I'd say probably about 60% of the time, it would be like, oh, okay, sign me up. And I agree, Alma is pretty well known in our community, and having a lot of our community leaders, you know, advocating and making, you know, campaigning for it has helped, but we still have a lot of work to do. And hopefully, you know, we'll start getting the message out, or our citizens will start getting the message a little bit more clear.
Yeah, and I
Thank
just want to
you.
mention that if you have a nonprofit or an organization, you can request a caravan from the Department of Health, and they've been over here twice already. And Saturday they were here. We had more vaccines going on, so we're requesting them for October and November. So we can help as much as we can. Someone can come and provide vaccines, and we do the outreach, get people informed, and get them to get the vaccine, because yeah, numbers are going up. Hospitals in Okanagan County up here are full. Wenatchee numbers have reached where we were last year at this time. So it's not good.
I'll do an additional plug for the DOH Caravan for nonprofits. They are providing, well, the DOH isn't, but in partnership with another organization, they're providing $5,000 grants to help with outreach, to help with personnel, to help with, you know, the operational costs. And so I do, if we've got folks that are on today that have nonprofits, especially Latino serving organizations, BIPOC serving organizations, that is a really good resource. And it's dollars that you don't have to do reporting to. So they're trying to cut barriers there. But, you know, in terms to your question, we've got a very relational community, and my approach, we don't work individually with community members, but my approach personally has been to talk to people, right? One-on-one, not just, okay, take the vaccine, it's good for you. These are the facts. These are, you know, but very much like my co-panelists have said is take the time to talk through it, take the time to listen. And, you know, it's going to have to be a domino effect at this point, right? Where we talk to one person and hopefully that person talks to, okay, well, you know what, I got the vaccine and, you know, it turned out it was okay. And hopefully that will get us going down the chain a little bit. But it's something that we cannot stop doing. We have to maintain, and Alma, thank you so much for that continued ganas that you've been putting into the vaccine sites that you're putting together.
Thank you. Yeah, we were in another group, in another panel, and some of the other organizations were saying, we're at a stop, there's nothing to do. And I'm going, oh my gosh, how are you doing that? But yeah, there's a lot of work to be done. Thank you.
Thank you. So back to las preguntas que tenía. So do you experience resistance when you are leading men, and how do you handle it? Estela?
Well, I feel like I've been very fortunate in that El Centro de la Raza for many, many years, I mean, a good probably 40 years was primarily women working at the organization. And, you know, through Roberto's leadership, he was always, you know, we had weekly meetings where we all came together, and there may have been 1 or 2 men in the room and the rest were women. And he was always encouraging us to, you know, give our opinion on any given matter. And so it's only been probably literally within the last 5 years that we have maybe 7 or 8 men who work at the organization. So that's been fantastic. But I have to tell you a story that when Roberto passed away, and I didn't find out about it until later, that there were, and when I got promoted to be the executive director in 2009, that there were men in our community that thought that the organization was going to fall apart. And because there was, you know, there was me, there was a woman going to be running the organization. So when I told when I was told that story after we built the $45 million Plaza Maestas, I said, well, they didn't really know Roberto, nor did they really know El Centro de la Raza, because Roberto would be asked on many occasions, Roberto, what's going to happen to El Centro de la Raza when you're no longer there? And he would say, nothing. Well, what do you mean, nothing? Nothing's going to change. It's going to continue to function as it is when I'm no longer there. And I can tell you quite frankly that when Roberto passed away on September 22nd, 2010, the next day, everybody was at work. You know, people were sad. I was at work. And it continued. It did not literally skip a beat. And of course, it's grown immensely, you know, since that time, you know, through not only my work, but the work of many other women that make up El Centro de la Raza.
A great organization, and you have done an amazing job. Alma?
The notes that I wrote for myself that I wanted to share is that there are, I guess, first of all, I'll start with kind of echoing what Estela said. Most of our workers here are women, okay? And we do have a couple men. For some reason, women are getting to this helping professional jobs. And so, but what I do experience is that when there are comments made by both men and women, And they come from a history of the role that a woman is supposed to play, especially in the Latino culture. And those comments are made by both men and women. And even as we work with our community, it's we need to empower our women to kind of, for them to empower themselves and think outside the box also. You know, you don't have to continue doing the things you've always done. You don't have to say this is the only place for me. I need to stay home. I need to take care of my kids. I mean, they definitely can, but we need to let them know that there are other opportunities. And so when comments are made that I know they go back to traditional norms and roles that we have learned, that I learned as a child, that most of us learned, and we've had to balance, how do I get away from that thought, okay, or that line of thinking? It's an opportunity for us to share and to inform and to hopefully make a difference in the lives of other women. So.
Thank you, Alma. Maria?
This is actually a really area for me. My experience is that I have to work twice as hard. And it's not just, so I have to work twice as hard if I want my voice to be heard or if I want to get something accomplished. And I don't just see this with men, but I see it working with other women as well as a woman of color. My colleagues are, are also women. Some of my colleagues are also women. And I oftentimes feel that their opinions or their requests hold more weight than mine. And I feel like if I want something done, I'm going to have to do it myself. I'm going to have to, as opposed to, my colleagues that request it and it happens. This happens more often than I would like to experience. So this is a really difficult situation for me because not only as a woman, but as a woman of color. And, I can't stop there. If I'm looking for something, I want to accomplish something and I don't get a response, I can't just stop there because otherwise it's not going to happen. So I feel like when I say I have to work twice as hard, I'm, going out researching, scheduling meetings, getting those resources that unless I do it, nobody else is going to take the time to do it, to get it done. This is a really, really tough area for me. Like I said, not only just as a woman, but as a woman of color. And again, if anything, it's making me stronger. But at the same time, you have, for me, I have to, walk very carefully because there's always that, if you get too agitated, or you get too emotional, or if you get upset, then there's that stigma that, oh, she's an angry person of color, and it's real. It really is real. And unless you've walked in my shoes, it's really hard for them to identify really, how I'm doing things and why I have to do things a certain way. So it's finding that balance that if I want to get something done, if I want to accomplish something, I'm gonna have to work super hard for it. I'm gonna have to do it myself. And I have to at the same time keep a balance and maintain myself because we're walking a very fine line.
Thank you. That's unfortunate that you have to go through that. Maria?
Yes and no. I'm kind of in Maria's boat as well, right? I think a lot of the experiences that I've had haven't necessarily always been with men either. The thing is, though, that to Maria's point is that I'm a lot more poised, right? And I'm a lot more strategic in the way that I say things, in the way that I carry myself, especially when we're in person, right? This Zoom dynamic just kind of put us all on a level playing field to some degree. And it really helped helped shape who I am and how I inherently am today as a professional, as just Maria, in my day-to-day life. I will say that unfortunately, like the most tragic and hurtful experiences have come from men from our culture. And you know, we can explain it away by talking about how it's machismo, and that's how they, you know, that's how they were raised, and that's how they've grown up, and that's how they are. But it's some of one specific interaction. I say some, but it's really, I've only had one really, really bizarre encounter. And it's, you know, I could chalk it down to, I'm the youngest one in the room, and sometimes I still am, at my ripe old age of 35 now. It's because I'm, you know, Latina, like how the questioning is like, how would you know? What do you even know? Right. I just feel like if they could, they'd just like hit me on my forehead and just like move me away. But you know, I think that on the flip side, I've had a lot of men allies who have really exemplified allyship, and white women allies too, that have exemplified allyship in the sense of, you know, using their privilege to help elevate my voice, elevate my skills, elevate my abilities, and really just be there. So as I navigate through life, that's an example of what I want to be.
Mhm. Well, gracias, Maria.
Can I just
And,
respond
I
to
have-
Maria's? Sorry, can I respond to Maria's point, is using our allies, our Caucasian friends to, you know, be that voice for us. And I wish it didn't have to be that way. I often find myself, you know, asking for that, and to see the response from our allies versus, you know, the response that I personally would get. You know, it's sad. It's sad that we have to, that's the response, but oftentimes we do have to rely on our Caucasian counterparts.
Okay. We have, I just have one more question, and we do have some questions from and the Q&As. My last question is, what advice would you give our next generation of female leaders?
So I've been starting first on every question. So Alma, I'm gonna pitch it over to you to go first.
Okay, I will be happy to do that, Stella. So what advice? I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is si se puede. Okay, I think I'd like for all young Latinas, all young girls, every single person, I would love for everyone to just feel like whatever I want to do, whatever I want to be, I can do it. Okay, don't let any obstacle get in your way. There's always a way. If you want to do it, do it. And I guess let me see. Yeah, and I think the other piece of advice would be just to always remember that there has been a lot of work done by people before us. Okay, we are here because of those people before us. So it's up to us. It's up to me to carry the torch now, and to work to do my best so that everyone feels like they can be who they are. They can feel good about themselves and do the very best that they can, and know that they have a lot of value. And the advice for them is that they then need to carry the torch for them and for everyone else. That would be those would be my words.
Gracias, Alma. Who wants to take it? Just who's next?
Well, I will just elaborate on what Alma has said, especially when she talked about others paving the way. And I think what happens to many young women who become professionals is that they separate themselves from community. They're in that world of, the professional and the chambers, and they don't go back to community. And that's the most important place for them for their career also. I mean, they may not see it at that point, but when you are helping community, when you're part of a community-based organization, those efforts are going to amplify who you are as a person, and people are going to notice you in terms of your, the possibilities that you bring, your leadership. And it's so important, no matter what track you take, whether you are an attorney, whether you are a banker, whether you are, in a university setting, you've always got to bring yourself back to community and keep that connection.
Gracias, Estela.
And to add a little bit to that is, let's lift each other up. I think once we reach that professional level, we kind of tend to, bring each other down or try to pull each other down. And we need to embrace each other and all our different abilities and lift each other up as a community, so that we can, continue to work together and, create a bigger cohort to continue helping our communities. And, it's, for me, it's not going to be easy. It's, you got to keep going. Oftentimes I question why I do what I do, because it's hard and it's challenging, and how much easier it would be to just go back into, my world of my family and, enjoy, whatever comes my way. But that's just, for me, that's just the easy way out, because all the good stuff requires a lot of work. And so, keep going, push hard, and be true to yourself. Remember your roots. I think, like I said, we all have a story, and we need to use our own story, the good and bad, to continue empowering each other, and embrace everything that we have to offer as Latinas, as women, and continue to give back.
Gracias, Maria.
Yeah, I can't agree more with what Alma said. Is make sure that you always have the torch, carry the torch, pass it on. I'm a firm believer that we can't keep moving forward without understanding where we have been, and that we as collective. Talking to younger women of color, first thing that I say, especially if we're shy, I'm an introvert, I'm usually the quietest one in the room, but the very first thing that I say is, 1, yes, you do know. 2, yes, you can. And 3, take the opportunity. Always take the opportunity. Always learn from those around you. There's never going to be a point where we can't learn, because we're always learning. And the one thing that I have learned with my career, I'm on my second career, is that life isn't linear, right? And it's okay if it is, but most likely it's not going to be. As we grow, we find ourselves in different places where our skills and our abilities are going to be able to shine. And I think that's where our leaders tend to go to, right? Is where they can feel the most helpful. So I think that's my advice in a nutshell.
Well, gracias, guerreras, for your words. I'm hoping that there's some young ladies out there that I will take it to heart, because I'm out here trying to help the community as well. So those are very words that I will take to heart and put to action here with my fellow Latinas, my daughters, my nieces, just everybody out there, to help them become who they want to become. Because like Alma said, sí se puede.
Sí se puede.
And we do have one question. I don't know if one of them, just maybe we have time for one person to answer that. And I just think it was a good question. And what is a need or a concern of the Hispanic community that isn't on our collective radar here in the state of Washington? That one of you can think of.
That isn't on the radar?
That isn't on our collective radar here in Washington state.
Well, I would answer that, I mean, from sort of a region in terms of what I think is not on our, collective radar in terms of Latinos in King County and Olympia, because I think, those things kind of go together, is that in South County, which is Federal Way, Burien, Kent, Auburn, 56% of Latinos now live in South County. They have been pushed out of the city of Seattle because of the lack of affordable housing. And there is not a safety net for Latinos in South King County like there is in the city of Seattle. And the issues that are happening in South County are devastating, in terms of what young girls are doing. Young girls as little as 10 years old are cutting their wrist. They're talking, 12 years olds talking about suicide. Young boys as young as 15 overdosing from drugs. I mean, there's just not the safety net, and it's not being talked about. I think in general, the needs of Latinos in the state of Washington are not being talked about. We're being forgotten, and somehow that has got to rise. Currently, El Centro de la Raza is working on a community needs assessment for South County, and we will have that out at the end of October. Right now, the writers are finishing up, the layout and all of that. But that to me is just a huge issue in this part of the state.
Gracias, Estela. I've heard a lot of, in the Toppenish area, Yakima area, a lot of fentanyl overdoses, and it's our young kids. And nobody, like you said, nobody's talking about it. The schools are not providing the data. I don't know why, because I believe that that's something that should be come out to light, and to, because these are our children, these are our future, and the help is not there. There are so many kids addicted to this drug, and it's just a simple Percocet. It's stuff that's over the counter that they can get, and they don't know any better, that they don't know what it's laced with. And a lot of the drugs are being laced right now with fentanyl, and a lot of our kids are dying, and it's the Latino kids, unfortunately. And it's not coming out, and I think we need it's something that we need to address. But thank you very much. We have reached the closing of this wonderful discussion, and I want to thank our host, Connie, a Center of Women and Democracy. And I especially want to thank our distinguished speakers for taking the time tonight to meet with us and talk to us about these issues. Thank you. Gracias a todas por estar aquí esta noche.
Thank you for having us.
Gracias.
Gracias a todos, Connie, and all of our panelists.
And thank you.
Sandra.
And thank you for joining our panel. I know you all have very busy lives, and you took up some very valuable time in order to be with us today. And so I thank you for doing so. And I was especially inspired in terms of listening to what it's like to be a woman leader within your communities, and to hear your experiences. We often don't hear those stories. And so thank you for your vulnerability and your graciousness in sharing those stories. Just to make a few announcements, but most importantly, to also thank our audience for attending. These events would not be able to go on without your participation. Just to put this on your collective radar, that's my favorite phrase of the day right now. I wanted to remind you of some upcoming events. Our October event is called Building a New Future with a focus on formerly incarcerated women. And then our November event is Sisters Not Enemies, Bipartisanship in Times of Intense Polarization. And that will be held on November 18th. We hope that you can attend. And again, thank you all for your participation. Hope you join us in the future. Have a great evening. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you.